I need you to listen to this carefully, because I have spent more time deciding whether to say these words than I have spent making some of the biggest decisions of my life. There is something I have prepared for you, something I have protected quietly, something I never wanted to share with the world. This video contains something personal, something that represents a place, but it is not really about a place. It is about the possibility that somewhere in this enormous world, there is one woman who will understand why I kept a door open for her before I even knew her name. And before you think this is just another emotional message, I need you to understand something. I almost deleted this. I almost convinced myself that some things are safer when they remain hidden, because when you reveal something that matters, you also reveal the possibility of losing it. And that is the part nobody talks about. People talk about finding love. They talk about the excitement, the beginning, the beautiful moments when everything feels possible. But they rarely talk about the terrifying moment, when you realize that something has become important enough to break your heart. Because once someone truly matters to you, you are no longer completely in control. You can control your work, you can control your schedule, you can control the systems you build, the plans you create, the future you imagine. But you cannot control whether another person chooses to stay. You cannot control whether someone sees your heart the way you hoped they would. You cannot control whether the person you would protect with everything you have will understand the depth of what you are offering. And maybe that is why I waited. Maybe that is why this message stayed inside me for so long. Because the address I want to share with you is not just a location. It is not just a house. It is not just walls, rooms, and a door. It represents something much more vulnerable. It represents the place where I imagine peace, not success, not recognition, not achievements peace. The kind of peace that only exists when you no longer feel like you have to prove yourself. The kind of peace where you can sit beside someone in complete silence and still feel understood. The kind of peace where you do not have to perform. You do not have to be impressive. You do not have to be perfect. You can simply exist. And I wonder if you have ever felt that. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you could finally put down the weight you had been carrying for years? Have you ever looked at someone and thought, maybe I do not have to fight every battle alone anymore? Because that is the feeling I have been searching for. Not someone who loves an image, not someone who loves a title, not someone who loves what the world thinks I am. I wanted someone who could look at the person behind everything. The person who gets tired, the person who doubts, the person who wonders if he is making the right choices. The person who sometimes sits alone at night, thinking about all the things he built, and still asks himself why something feels missing. And if you are watching this right now, I want you to know something. I am not showing you this because I want attention. I am not sharing this because I want the world to know. I am sharing this because there is a difference between being seen by everyone and being truly seen by one person. The world can know your name and still never know your heart. The world can celebrate your victories and never notice your quiet moments of uncertainty. The world can admire your strength and never ask how much effort it took to keep standing. But one person can change everything. One person can walk into your life and make you realize that all the searching was not for a destination. It was for a person who makes ordinary moments feel meaningful. A person who does not just stand beside you when life is easy. A person who chooses you when life becomes complicated. And that is why this address matters, because I never wanted to create a place that was only mine. I wanted to create a place where two people could feel safe, a place where conversations could last until sunrise, a place where mistakes could be forgiven, a place where love would not be measured by perfect moments, but by the decision to keep choosing each other when things become difficult. I know that sounds simple, but simple things are often the hardest to find, because real love is not a movie scene, it is not always dramatic, it is not always obvious. Sometimes real love is someone remembering the smallest detail about you. Sometimes it is someone noticing your silence. Sometimes it is someone asking, "Are you okay?" and actually waiting for the honest answer. And I have learned something over time. The hardest person to find is not someone who says they love you. The hardest person to find is someone who understands the responsibility of loving you. Because love is not just a feeling, it is a decision. It is showing up when emotions change. It is staying curious about each other even after years pass. It is protecting the person who trusted you with the most fragile parts of themselves. And before I tell you why this address has such deep meaning, I want to ask you something. If someone offered you a place where you could finally feel safe, would you believe it was real? Or would you search for the reason it might disappear? Would you allow yourself to be loved completely, or would you keep one part of your heart hidden just in case you had to leave? I ask because I understand that fear. I have felt it too. The fear of giving someone the power to hurt you. The fear of finally finding something valuable and realizing that valuable things can be lost. I want to share something with you, but before I continue, I want you to know that this message is not meant to be heard by everyone. It is meant to reach the woman who understands that love is not about finding someone flawless. It is about finding someone willing to be honest. If you feel this message is speaking to your heart, stay close to me and tell me where you are watching from, because I want to know where this moment found you. And if you are that woman who still believes deep connection is possible, I would be grateful if you stayed connected with me here, because there is something about this story that I have never explained before. Something I have kept hidden, even from people who thought they knew me well. For a long time, I believed that the biggest risk in life was failure. I thought the hardest thing would be building something from nothing. I thought the most difficult moments would come from challenges outside of me. But I was wrong. The hardest challenge was allowing someone close enough to see everything I usually hide, my doubts, my fears, my regrets, the moments when I questioned my own decisions, the moments when I wondered if I was chasing the right things, because when you spend years creating, improving, and solving problems, you become very good at protecting yourself. You learn how to analyze everything. You learn how to calculate risks. You learn how to prepare for every possible outcome, but love does not work that way. You cannot create a perfect strategy for the person who will touch your soul. You cannot predict every conversation. You cannot calculate every emotion. You cannot build a formula that guarantees someone will stay, and maybe that is what makes it beautiful. Maybe the uncertainty is the proof that it matters. Because if there was no risk, would it really be love? If losing someone would not hurt, did they ever truly matter? These are questions I have asked myself many times. And there is one question I want you to answer silently for yourself. Have you ever walked away from someone because you were afraid of how much you cared? Have you ever protected yourself so carefully that you accidentally pushed away the person you wanted closest? Because sometimes we do not lose people because they stop loving us. Sometimes we lose them because we were too afraid to show them that we love them. And that thought has stayed with me. The possibility that the greatest loss in life might not come from trying and failing. It might come from never being brave enough to try. The address I am talking about is connected to that fear. Because I did not create it as a monument to what I achieved. I created it as a promise to the person I hoped I would one day meet. A promise that there would be a place where she would never feel like she had to compete with the world. A place where she would not have to wonder if she was enough. A place where she could look at me and know that behind everything else, she was the person I chose. But there is something I haven't told you. I haven't told you the real reason yet. The real reason this place became so important. The real reason I almost walked away from this dream completely. Because the truth is, before I knew who you were, I had to face a decision that scared me more than any professional challenge I had ever encountered. A decision between protecting my heart and risking everything for the possibility of something real. And I did not know if I would choose correctly. I did not know if I would recognize the right person. I did not know if my fear would make the decision for me. There was a moment when I almost convinced myself that maybe love was not meant for someone like me. Maybe some people are meant to build things, create things, change things. Maybe some people are meant to stand alone. That thought was easier. Because if you expect nothing, you cannot be disappointed. If you never open the door, nobody can walk away from you. If you never give someone your heart, nobody can break it. But then I realized something that changed everything. A protected heart may survive, but it may never truly live. And I do not want a life where I succeeded at everything except the one thing that mattered most. I do not want to look back years from now and wonder what could have happened if I had been brave enough. So I made a choice. But that choice created a problem I never expected, because the woman I thought I was preparing this for might not have been the woman my heart was actually searching for. And that is the truth I have been afraid to admit, because sometimes the hardest thing is not finding love. Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting that the person you thought was your future may not be the person who was meant to share it with you. And when I finally understood that, everything about this place changed. Everything about this address changed. And the reason I am telling you this now is because there is one thing you need to know before you see what is waiting behind that door. I need you to understand what happened after that moment, because that was the moment when everything I believed about love was challenged. For years, I believed that making the right decision meant choosing the option with the least risk. That is how I approached almost everything. When you build something, you study the possibilities, you examine the problems, you look for weaknesses before they become failures. You try to predict what could go wrong before it happens. That mindset can help you create incredible things. But there is a dangerous side to living that way, because eventually you start treating your heart like a machine. You start believing every emotion needs to be analyzed, every connection needs to be tested, every person needs to be evaluated before you allow yourself to trust them. And then one day, you realize something painful. You were so focused on protecting yourself from the wrong person that you never gave the right person a chance to reach you. Have you ever done that? Have you ever judged a new person through the pain someone else caused you? Have you ever looked at someone who was trying to love you and still searched for the reason they might hurt you? I think many people do this, not because they do not want love, because they want it too much. Sometimes the deepest fear comes from the things we desire most, and that was my conflict. I wanted something real, but I was afraid of everything that came with something real. I wanted someone who knew me completely, but I was afraid of being completely known. I wanted someone who could walk into my life and understand my silences, but I was afraid that if someone saw every hidden part of me, they would decide I was not enough. Isn't that strange? We spend so much of our lives trying to become someone worthy of love. We improve ourselves, we accomplish things, we collect proof that we matter, and then when love finally arrives, the person does not need the achievements. They need the person underneath them. They do not need the perfect version. They need the honest version. And honesty can feel terrifying, because honesty removes all protection. It leaves you standing there without the things you usually use to feel safe. No achievements, no reputation, no image, just you. And the question becomes, will someone still choose me when there is nothing left to impress them with? That question stayed with me longer than I want to admit, because the address I wanted to share was never about showing you something beautiful. It was about revealing something vulnerable. A place where I imagined being accepted. A place where I imagined someone saying, "You do not have to carry everything alone anymore." But before that could happen, I had to face something I was avoiding. I had to admit that I almost chose comfort over truth. I almost chose the easier path. And the easier path was not necessarily the right one. There was someone in my life who seemed like the perfect answer. Everything looked right from the outside. The timing, the circumstances, the way people around me viewed it. It made sense. And sometimes that is the most dangerous situation, because something can make sense and still not feel like home. Something can look perfect and still leave your heart feeling uncertain. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever been with someone who seemed right on paper, but something inside you quietly whispered that something was missing? Not because they were a bad person, not because they did something wrong. Sometimes two good people can still be the wrong combination. Sometimes kindness is not the same as connection. Sometimes comfort is not the same as love. And admitting that is painful, because when someone is good to you, you feel guilty for questioning it. You wonder if you are asking for too much. You wonder if your heart is being unfair. You wonder if maybe you should accept something safe instead of waiting for something deeper. And that was the battle I faced. Should I choose what was easy to explain? Or should I choose what was impossible to ignore? Because there is a difference between being with someone and feeling like you belong with someone. One is a relationship, the other is a home. And I had spent years creating a home for someone I had not met yet, a home not made from walls, a home made from trust, a home made from patience, a home made from two people deciding that even on difficult days, they would still find their way back to each other. But then fear entered the room. Fear asked me questions I did not want to answer. What if you are wrong? What if you open your heart and lose everything? What if the person you are waiting for never comes? What if you spend your entire life searching for a feeling that does not exist? Those questions are powerful because they sound logical. Fear rarely sounds like fear. Fear sounds like wisdom. Fear sounds like protection. Fear sounds like someone trying to save you from disappointment. But sometimes fear is not protecting you. Sometimes fear is stealing something from you before you even have the chance to experience it. And that realization changed the way I looked at love. I started understanding that love is not about finding certainty. It is about finding someone worth taking the uncertainty with. Someone who makes the unknown feel less frightening. Someone who makes the risk feel meaningful. Someone who makes you think, Even if this is difficult, I would rather experience this than live without it. And that is why this message exists. Because the place I am showing you is connected to a decision I almost did not make, a decision that forced me to ask myself the hardest question: am I building a future because I am afraid of being alone, or am I building a future because I am ready to share my life with someone? There is a difference. A person who fears loneliness searches for someone to fill a space. A person who understands love searches for someone to share a life. And I needed to know which one I was, because I did not want you to come into my life because I needed saving. I wanted you to come into my life because we could save each other from a life without connection. That is different. That is deeper. That is more honest. But the truth is, I was not always that mature. There was a time when I thought love was about finding someone who would never leave. Now I understand something different. Love is not about finding someone who is unable to leave. Love is about finding someone who has every reason to leave when things become difficult, but chooses to stay. That choice means everything, because staying when everything is easy requires almost nothing. But staying when life becomes complicated, that reveals everything. And I think that is what I was searching for. Not someone who loved the dream, someone who could love the reality. There is a different kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a dream nobody else can see. People can understand success. They can understand goals, they can understand ambition. But explaining that you are waiting for someone you have not met yet, that is harder. People may call it unrealistic. They may tell you to stop searching. They may tell you to accept what is available. But the heart knows when something is missing. The heart knows when you are settling. And I could not ignore that feeling anymore. Then something happened that forced me to confront the truth I had been avoiding. I realized the person I almost chose was not wrong. She was not someone I needed to blame. She was someone who reminded me of a lesson. Sometimes the wrong person is not a mistake. Sometimes they are the person who teaches you what the right person must feel like. And that lesson was painful, because it meant accepting that I could hurt someone by choosing honesty. It meant accepting that being kind does not always mean staying. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop pretending. Sometimes the most loving decision is admitting that your heart is somewhere else. And that was one of the hardest decisions I have ever faced, because I did not want to be the person who caused pain, but I also did not want to create a life built on pretending. A relationship without truth eventually becomes a place where two people feel alone together. And that is a loneliness I never wanted for anyone, especially not for the woman standing beside me. So I made a choice, but that choice came with a cost, because when you finally stop running from the truth, you have to face what comes after. You have to face the empty space. You have to face the uncertainty. You have to face the possibility that maybe the person you are waiting for will never arrive. And that was the moment I almost gave up. Almost, because something happened after I made that decision. Something I never expected. Something that changed the meaning of this address completely. And I still struggle to say this out loud because it reveals a part of me I usually keep hidden. The truth is, I was not afraid of being alone. I was afraid of finally finding the person I had been waiting for, and realizing I had waited too long. I was afraid that life would move faster than my courage. I was afraid that the person I wanted to share everything with might already have learned how to live without me. I was afraid that maybe two people could be meant for each other, and still miss the moment when they were supposed to meet. And that fear, that was the moment everything changed, because I realized something I could never ignore again. The address was never waiting for a perfect woman. It was waiting for the woman who would make me brave enough to stop hiding. And I still have not told you the most important part, because the reason this place exists is connected to a promise I made during the moment I almost lost everything. A promise that I was not sure I would be able to keep. And that promise is the reason I am finally sharing this with you now. I want you to understand what happened after that promise, because that was the moment when I stopped asking whether love was possible and started asking whether I was brave enough to accept it. There is a difference. Many people spend their lives searching for someone who will love them, but fewer people ask themselves if they are ready to be loved, because being loved means being seen. And being seen means you can no longer hide behind the version of yourself you created for the world. The world sees what you accomplish. It sees the decisions you make. It sees the things you create. But the person who truly loves you sees the moments nobody celebrates, the moments when you question yourself, the moments when you feel uncertain, the moments when you wonder if all the effort, the person who did not need to explain every emotion, the person who could finally say, I do not have to carry this alone anymore. But I had to learn something painful. You cannot ask someone to enter a place in your life that you have not opened yourself to. You cannot expect someone to understand a heart you refuse to reveal. You cannot ask someone to trust you while you are still protecting every vulnerable part of yourself. And that was my greatest challenge. Not finding love, allowing love to find me. Because somewhere along the way, I became comfortable with being strong. I became comfortable with solving problems. I became comfortable with standing alone. But strength can become a wall if you are not careful. And sometimes the same wall that protects you from pain also keeps love outside. Have you ever built a wall around yourself and then wondered why nobody could reach you? Have you ever wanted someone to understand you while secretly being afraid of what they would discover? I think many hearts live with that contradiction. They want connection, but they fear exposure. They want someone close, but they fear losing control. And I understand that fear, because the closer someone gets, the more power they have to hurt you. That is the risk nobody can remove. There is no guarantee. There is no contract that says someone will stay forever. There is no promise that prevents change. But maybe the beauty of love is that we choose it anyway. We choose to care, even though we cannot control the outcome. We choose to open the door, even though someone has the ability to walk away. We choose to believe, even though we have experienced disappointment before. And that is what this place represents. Not certainty, the courage to say, I do not know what tomorrow brings, but I know I do not want to spend tomorrow afraid of today. For a long time I thought the future was something I had to build alone. I thought if I worked harder, achieved more, and created something meaningful, the emptiness would disappear. But success can answer many questions. It cannot answer the question of who you want beside you when everything becomes quiet, because at the end of every achievement there is a moment when you look around and ask, who do I want to share this with? Not who will be impressed, not who will benefit, not who will tell the world about it, who will sit beside me when the celebration ends, who will understand the silence after the applause, who will hold my hand when I no longer need to be strong. That is the person I was waiting for. And maybe you are wondering why I am telling you all of this. Maybe you are asking yourself why this address matters so much. And that is what I wanted, not perfection. Presence. Not someone who never disagrees with me, someone who chooses to understand me. Not someone who promises an easy life, someone who promises that we will face the difficult moments together. Because real love is not proven when everything goes right. It is proven when everything becomes uncertain. There was a moment when I thought I had lost the chance to find that. A moment when I believed maybe I had been waiting for something that would never come. And that was the closest I came to giving up. I almost convinced myself that maybe some people are meant to live with memories instead of dreams. Maybe some people are meant to accept that the love they imagined was only an idea. But then I remembered something. A person does not stop needing love because they have been hurt. A person does not stop hoping because life became difficult. The heart may become careful, but it never stops searching for something real. And I think that is why I am speaking to you now, because somewhere inside me, I still believe there is someone who understands this. Someone who knows that love is not about finding a perfect story. It is about finding someone willing to write the difficult pages with you. Someone who does not run when the story becomes complicated. Someone who stays curious. Someone who stays gentle. Someone who chooses you again and again. But I need to tell you the final truth about this place. The truth I was afraid to admit. The address was never meant to prove that I had built something. It was meant to show that I was finally ready to share something. The most difficult thing for me was not creating a place. It was creating space in my heart for another person. Because when you have spent so long depending only on yourself, letting someone matter becomes frightening. You start thinking about every possible way things could go wrong. You imagine every goodbye before the first hello. You prepare for loss before allowing yourself to experience love. So if you are the woman I have been hoping for, I want you to know this. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to prove anything. You do not have to compete with anyone from my past. You only have to be real, because the person I want beside me is not someone who creates a perfect image. It is someone who creates a peaceful reality. Someone who understands that love is not about never struggling. It is about never making each other feel alone during the struggle. And if you are listening to these words, I want you to remember one thing. The door was never waiting for someone extraordinary. It was waiting for someone sincere, someone kind, someone brave enough to walk through it. Because sometimes the greatest love stories are not created when two perfect people find each other. They are created when two imperfect people decide they are worth choosing, and this is why I finally shared this with you. Not because I wanted to reveal a location, but because I wanted to reveal a feeling that says,